In the heart of Silicon Valley, where fortunes rise faster than the morning sun and fall just as quickly, a name once echoed through every glass tower and boardroom. Ward Tech Industries. It was the empire built by Charles Ward, a man of grit and genius, who believed technology should serve people, not pride. When he passed, the world mourned a visionary, and in his place stood his only son, Elias Ward. Elias inherited not just a company, but a kingdom of expectations. Reporters called him the quiet heir. Investors called him the next titan. But behind the polite smiles and handshakes, whispers filled the air. He's not like his father. They were right. Elias wasn't. He was quieter, more observant, the kind of man who didn't need to be seen to understand everything happening in a room. He'd grown up watching his father shake the hands of engineers before executives, call janitors by name, and walk through the workshop floor more often than his own office. But in the years after Charles Ward's death, something in the company began to rot. Not in the numbers, but in the people. Ward Tech grew richer, its people grew colder. Elias noticed it in the smallest of things, the way managers rolled their eyes at front desk workers, the quiet laughter that followed a cleaner's footsteps, the endless talk about efficiency, never empathy. He sat in meetings listening to people speak of cutting unnecessary staff, as though human lives were line items. His father used to say, "Money doesn't change people, it just shows who they were all along." And Elias wondered if Ward Tech was still his father's company, or just a reflection of what success had turned them into. So one night, long after the offices had gone dark, he walked through the empty hallways with only the soft hum of servers in the glow of computer screens around him. He passed the pictures on the wall, photos of smiling employees, charity drives, innovation awards, reminders of what the company once stood for. At the end of the corridor, he paused by his father's portrait. Charles Ward's face, proud yet gentle, looked down at him. Underneath the frame was a brass plaque with his favorite quote, "Character is what you do when no one's watching." Elias stared at it for a long time. Then quietly he smiled. The idea came to him not as a spark of anger, but as a quiet revelation. If he wanted to see who his people truly were, he couldn't watch from the top floor. He had to walk among them, unseen. The next morning, the world would know him as the elusive CEO traveling for strategic partnerships abroad. But behind the scenes, Elias Ward would step into an entirely different life, one without wealth, recognition, or power. He would become Eli, the new maintenance worker assigned to Ward Tech's Palo Alto headquarters. The transformation was humbling in every sense. Gone were the tailored suits, the silent luxury car, the polite greetings from executives. In their place, faded work boots, a plain gray uniform, and a name tag that simply read E. Ward. He arrived before sunrise when the parking lot was still half empty and the air smelled of dew and distant coffee. The receptionist barely looked up when he signed in. Security waved him through with the same bored glance reserved for delivery drivers and night staff. For the first time in years, Elias moved through his own company completely invisible. He watched engineers rush past him without a word. He opened doors for people who didn't say, "Thank you." He mopped floors while interns laughed at memes on their phones. Every corner whispered a silent truth. How quickly respect fades when the suit does. By mid-morning, the office was buzzing. The employees of Ward Tech prided themselves on brilliance. Coders, developers, designers, all working in an environment built on glass walls and polished egos. The place gleamed with modern perfection, self-serve coffee bars, minimalist decor, slogans about innovation and culture. Elias walked among them quietly, pushing his cart of supplies. Most barely noticed him. A few gave polite, empty smiles. But one voice cut through the chatter, a sharp, mocking tone. "Hey, old man," someone called from the break area. Elias turned. A young supervisor with slick hair and a designer watch leaned against the counter. His badge read Trent Miles. Elias knew him well, one of the fastest rising managers in the company, charming on paper, poisonous in practice. Trent smirked. "Missed a spot by the elevator. You planning to get it today or next week?" A few nearby employees chuckled. Elias nodded quietly, mopping the floor without a word. "Guess they'll hire anyone these days," Trent added, sipping his espresso. Must be nice, and no KPIS, no stress. Just push a mop and collect a paycheck. Elias didn't look up. He just said, "Everyone's got a job to do." The young manager raised an eyebrow. "Sure thing, Chief. Don't forget to shine the glass door. The investors love clean entrances." He grinned and walked off, laughing with two others. Elias kept mopping. His hands were steady, his eyes calm. Inside, though, he felt something shift. Not anger, but confirmation. His father used to warn him that arrogance doesn't start at the top. It grows quietly from the bottom, watered by culture, unchecked by conscience. Later that day, Elias met Naomi Brooks, a young intern from a small town in Oregon. She smiled when she passed him in the hallway, not out of pity, but genuine kindness. She even held the door for him. It was a small thing, but in a world built on hierarchies, it meant everything. "Good morning," she said warmly. "You must be new." Elias nodded. "First week." "Well, welcome to Ward Tech. The coffee's free, but trust me, it's terrible." She laughed softly. Elias smiled back. "I'll keep that in mind." As she left, he watched her disappear into the glow of monitors and glass cubicles. It wasn't just her kindness that struck him. It was how rare it felt. By evening, the office was nearly empty. Elias cleaned silently, reflecting on everything he'd seen that day. The laughter, the gossip, the pride. But he also thought of Naomi, a single light in a room full of reflections. He looked out through the tall glass windows of Ward Tech, watching the city beyond flicker with a million lights. His father used to say that Silicon Valley was built on dreams, but sustained by people. And now Elias wondered how many of those people had forgotten what it meant to be decent. Tomorrow he decided he would keep playing his part, not for revenge, but for truth. Because truth, he thought, was never found in what people said when they knew your name. It was hidden in how they treated you when they didn't. He picked up his cleaning rag, folded it neatly, and placed it back in the cart. As the elevator doors closed behind him, his reflection shimmered faintly in the stainless steel. A billionaire disguised as a janitor, stepping quietly into the test of a lifetime. And somewhere he could almost hear his father's voice whisper, "Character, son, is what you do when no one's watching." The next morning arrived wrapped in gold light and routine chatter. Ward Tech came alive again. Screens flickering on, heels clicking across marble, the smell of roasted coffee filling the atrium. Elias stood by the supply closet, tightening the strap on his gloves, already invisible. The faces that had laughed at him yesterday moved past as if he were part of the furniture. It was strange how easily people could erase another human being from their world. He began his rounds, emptying bins, straightening chairs, wiping fingerprints from glass that reflected people who never once looked back. He listened more than he spoke. It was amazing what people revealed when they believed the walls couldn't hear them. In the hallway near research and development, two engineers were whispering about Trent Miles. "Guy spends more time networking than leading," one said. "I heard he's been double billing client hours to make his numbers look good." "Shh," the other replied. "You say that too loud and you'll be next on the layoff list." Elias kept sweeping, head bowed. But inside he stored every word. That afternoon, he pushed his cart past the glass offices where upper management lived behind translucent walls of power. At the far end sat Victoria Cole, the HR director. Flawless hair, sharp eyes, and a voice that could slice through excuses. She was respected outwardly and feared quietly. As he cleaned outside her office, he heard her on a call. "Yes, I understand," she said crisply. "If the metrics don't hit target, we'll trim the bottom 5%. No, I'm not worried about morale. They'll survive or they won't. That's business." The call ended. She looked up, noticed him, and frowned. "Could you not mop there right now?" she said without looking directly at him. "I'm expecting someone important." Elias nodded. "Of course, ma'am." She didn't say thank you. She was already back at her screen. Moments later, the important someone arrived. Trent Miles again, his designer watch gleaming under the recessed lights. "Morning, Victoria," he said smoothly. "I've got those numbers you wanted. We can pad the forecast by shifting the R&D budget. No one will notice." Victoria smirked. "Perfect. The board likes optimism." Elias turned away, heart heavy. Optimism, he thought. Such a beautiful word twisted into something hollow. Later, as he cleaned the cafeteria tables, Naomi Brooks appeared again, carrying 2 sandwiches. "Hey, Eli," she called, walking toward him. "You had lunch yet?" He smiled faintly. "Not yet." "Then you're in luck. The turkey one's yours. It's not gourmet, but it's better than smelling everyone else's food all day." He hesitated. "You don't have to." "Relax," she interrupted with a grin. "You're saving me from overeating." Consider it community service. They sat near the window, the hum of conversation around them fading into the background. Naomi talked about her dreams of becoming a product designer, about sending half her stipend home to her mom, about how intimidating this place could feel sometimes. "People here," she said softly, "they talk about innovation, but half of them won't even say hi to the janitors. Feels off, you know?" Elias looked at her, seeing in her the compassion his father once admired. "Maybe," he said, "they just forgot that respect doesn't have a dress code." She nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, but I think people remember eventually. Life has a way of teaching." He smiled at that. She doesn't even know how right she is, he thought. When the workday ended, he walked out to the parking lot, watching the employees drive off in shiny cars while he waited for the last shuttle. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. A secure message from his personal assistant. "Everything ready, sir. Cameras installed discreetly. Staff list compiled. Proceed?" Elias typed one word back. "Proceed." That night, under the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, he returned to the building alone. He moved through the corridors like a ghost of the man everyone once revered. In the server room, screens flickered to life, showing internal footage. Meeting rooms, hallways, break areas. Not for surveillance, but for truth. He wanted to witness behavior, not control it. For hours, he watched clips from the day. Trent flirting with a junior designer while mocking her ideas, Victoria berating a timid employee for asking about overtime pay, and Naomi helping a coworker carry heavy boxes after everyone else walked past. Each moment painted the same picture. Brilliance without kindness, progress without principle. By dawn, Elias leaned back in the chair, exhaustion and disappointment mixing into quiet resolve. He finally understood what his father's portrait seemed to ask each time he passed it. "Do they still deserve this company?" he whispered into the empty room. "Not yet." When morning came, Elias put the uniform back on, straightened his cap, and walked once more among the people who thought he was no one. But something inside him had changed. Yesterday he'd been curious. Today he was determined. He greeted everyone he passed with the same calm tone, testing how many would answer back. Most didn't. Trent brushed past him without a glance. Victoria gave him another order about cleaning schedules as though addressing a machine. Only Naomi smiled. At lunchtime, a small incident unfolded that revealed more than a dozen memos ever could. A delivery man spilled coffee near the main conference room right before a client tour. Trent exploded in fury, shouting loud enough for the floor to hear. "Who hired these idiots? Clean it up now!" he barked. His eyes landed on Elias. "You, mop! Now!" Elias stepped forward calmly, but before he could reach the spill, Naomi was already kneeling with napkins. "It's fine," she said gently to the delivery man. "Accidents happen." Trent rolled his eyes. "Maybe you'd like to trade jobs with him." Naomi didn't answer. She just kept cleaning. Elias joined her silently. Together they finished, and when they stood, he saw the flush of embarrassment on Trent's face. Not from guilt, but annoyance at being ignored. That evening, as the building emptied once again, Elias stood by the window, where the city lights blinked like distant stars. He thought about his father walking these same halls years ago, shaking hands, building trust. Now he saw a company proud of its technology, but poor in its humanity. He whispered to the glass, "Tomorrow the real test begins." And with that, the janitor, who was a billionaire, turned off the lights and walked out, unseen and unheard, carrying with him the quiet certainty that the measure of WardTech's future would no longer be its profits, but its people. The next morning, WardTech buzzed with its usual rhythm, deadlines, presentations, and the low hum of self-importance that filled every corner of the glass building. But beneath the ordinary, something had changed. Without announcement or warning, the company's systems flickered, emails bounced, Keycards failed. Access levels suddenly shifted. A quiet panic began to ripple. In the cafeteria, Trent Miles slammed his tablet on the counter. What the hell's going on with IT? My files are gone. Victoria Cole stormed past him, her heels clicking like gunfire. They've restricted executive access. Even mine. Employees whispered across cubicles. Screens displayed a simple message. System review in progress. Please report to main hall at 10 a.m. It felt official, but no one knew who had sent it. At precisely 10, the main hall filled. Over 200 employees stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the company's glowing blue logo. The air was tight with tension. Victoria took the podium first, her voice firm but rattled. Whoever did this, it's not funny. We have clients expecting deliverables. She stopped mid-sentence when the double doors at the back opened. A man stepped through, dressed not in the janitor's uniform they were used to seeing, but in a dark tailored suit. His posture was straight, his expression calm. The murmurs began immediately. Confusion, disbelief, curiosity. Naomi was the first to recognize him. Her eyes widened. Eli? Trent frowned. Wait, isn't that the cleaner? The man walked to the podium without a word. Every camera phone in the room lifted instinctively. Then he spoke. Good morning, he said evenly, his voice carrying the weight of quiet authority. My name is Elias Ward. Perhaps some of you remember that name from the plaques in the lobby. The founder of Ward Tech, Jonathan Ward. I'm his son. A silence fell so deep it seemed to hum. Trent blinked, laughing nervously. Wait, you're Elias Ward? You've been mopping floors for a week. Yes, Elias said calmly. And in that time, I've learned more about this company than any quarterly report could ever show me. He let the words settle. Faces turned pale. A few employees lowered their phones, unsure if they were even allowed to record anymore. I built this company's second phase, Elias continued, not to expand profits, but to test principles. My father believed in innovation with humanity, technology that improves lives without degrading the people behind it. But somewhere along the line, something changed. He turned to the projection behind him. A series of clips began to play. Security footage, time-stamped and unedited. Trent berating a junior developer, Victoria mocking a struggling intern, a group of employees laughing at the janitor behind his back. Then contrasting that, Naomi staying late to help a temp who'd missed a deadline, or covering for a sick colleague without asking for credit. The room was frozen. The laughter that once echoed in those hallways had vanished now, replaced by the cold sound of truth. This wasn't surveillance, Elias said quietly. It was reflection, a mirror. What you saw was who you became when you thought no one was watching. Trent took a step forward, face flushed. You had no right to spy on us. Elias interrupted, voice calm but firm. You had every right to act differently. The words landed like a gavel. He turned to Victoria. You, Ms. Cole, will tender your resignation today. You traded empathy for efficiency, and that's not a trade this company will ever make again. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then his gaze shifted to Trent. As for you, your metrics were built on lies. You'll leave the building after this meeting, and consider yourself fortunate that I care more about second chances than courtrooms. Trent's voice broke. This is insane. You can't just... But the guards by the door had already stepped forward. Elias didn't raise his voice. You failed the test, Mr. Miles. Not because you lacked intelligence, but because you lacked character. This company can teach skills. It cannot teach decency. A murmur moved through the room, the uncomfortable kind that comes when truth collides with denial. Then Elias looked toward Naomi. Ms. Brooks, he said softly, please step forward. She hesitated, cheeks flushing. Me? Yes, you passed the test. Not because you were trying to impress anyone, but because you treated everyone as if they mattered. That's what leadership looks like when no one's watching. Her eyes glistened. Sir, I didn't do anything special. He smiled faintly. Exactly. He handed her a white envelope. Inside was an offer letter, full-time position, salary triple her current pay, and the title, Head of Employee Culture and Innovation. The room erupted. Shock, whispers, realization. Elias turned back to the crowd. From this day on, Ward Tech will rebuild. Not just in code and product lines, but in heart. We'll measure success by integrity, not arrogance. If that makes us slower, so be it. I'd rather build something worth believing in than something fast that falls apart. He paused, scanning the faces that only days ago hadn't looked twice at him. You don't need to be rich to treat someone with respect. You just need to remember what it means to be human. He stepped away from the podium. The room remained silent until Naomi began to clap. Slowly, then louder. Others joined. Soon the hall echoed with applause, not out of obligation but awakening. As he walked toward the exit, someone called out, "Sir, why go through all this? Why pretend?" Elias turned, his silhouette framed by sunlight spilling through the glass doors. "Because power reveals people," he said, "but so does humility. I needed to see which one you served." Then he walked out, leaving behind a company forever changed. A company that had just learned the most expensive lesson in business, that wealth means nothing if you can't afford your own conscience. Months passed. The story of Ward Tech's janitor billionaire spread far beyond Silicon Valley. Whispered in coffee shops, dissected in business schools, debated on podcasts. Some called it a stunt, others called it a sermon. But inside the glass walls of Ward Tech itself, something real had shifted. The company no longer buzzed with arrogance. The laughter that once came from mockery now came from collaboration. Employees who used to rush past the janitorial staff now paused to say good morning. There was an honesty in the air, a humility that could not be faked. Naomi Brooks sat in her new office, a space that looked nothing like the ones before it. Plants by the window, photos of team outings, sticky notes filled with small handwritten compliments from employees. She had turned the old executive suite into something warmer, human. Every Friday, she gathered the staff for 10 minutes of reflection. Not performance reviews, not metrics, but gratitude. People shared moments where kindness made work easier. For the first time, Ward Tech felt alive. Across the city, Elias watched from a quiet hilltop home overlooking San Francisco Bay. The mansion was modern but modest in tone. Steel, glass, and silence. He preferred it that way. Success, he'd learned, was loud when it was insecure. He scrolled through the latest report Naomi had sent him. Profits were rising again, slowly, sustainably. But more importantly, employee satisfaction had soared. Retention was up, lawsuits down. And in the company's internal forum, someone had started a thread titled, "Remember Eli?" Under it were hundreds of stories, small acts of decency that employees had begun to share. One read, "I apologized to the janitor today. He just smiled and said he already forgave me." Elias smiled faintly, then closed the laptop. He walked out onto the balcony, the wind carrying the faint hum of the city below. The same city that once looked down on him when he wore a name tag and pushed a mop. He thought of his father, Jonathan Ward, who had taught him that the true measure of leadership was not how many followed you, but how many you lifted. His father had believed that wealth was never ownership, only stewardship. And as the sunset washed the skyline in gold, Elias realized that the test had never been for them alone. It had been for him, too. He'd needed to remember what power felt like when stripped of privilege, to feel invisible, so he'd never again forget what invisibility felt like for others. A soft knock broke his thought. His assistant, an older woman named Margaret, stepped in. "Mr. Ward, the board wants to know if you'll be attending the awards dinner tonight. They're honoring you as Innovator of the Year." Elias turned, a wry smile ghosting his lips. "No, Margaret. Let Naomi accept it. She earned it." Margaret nodded with quiet approval. "You've changed things here, sir." He looked out again, eyes distant. "No," he said softly. "They changed themselves. I just gave them a mirror." As night settled over the city, the skyline shimmered like circuitry, veins of light pulsing with the rhythm of human ambition. Inside those towers, hundreds of people now worked with a little more patience, a little more kindness, and a lot more awareness that status means nothing if you lose your soul climbing toward it. Because somewhere in the story of a man who mopped floors to teach the powerful humility, people had found something they didn't expect. Not just guilt, but guidance. And if you listen closely, you can still hear his words echoing in every break room and boardroom, every tech startup and small business that took the lesson to heart. You don't need to be rich to treat someone with respect. You just need to remember what it means to be human. Sometimes the richest man in the room is the one who chooses silence over status. Sometimes the real test isn't written in numbers or contracts. It's written in how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. Elias Ward didn't expose his employees to humiliate them. He exposed them to remind us all of something simple, that humility is the highest form of intelligence, that kindness, when no one's watching, is the truest currency of power. Because respect costs nothing, but reveals everything. In a world obsessed with appearance, he proved that the greatest disguise isn't poverty or wealth, it's character. So before you judge the janitor, the waiter, or the stranger next to you, remember, you might be standing in front of the person who owns the building, or the one who'll one day own your respect. Every story we tell is more than a moment. It's a mirror. A reminder that truth still matters, that dignity still survives, and that no struggle goes unseen. If this story moved you, don't let it be the last one you hear. Subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss a voice that deserves to be heard. Because behind every shadow, there's a story worth remembering.